6 days in Fallujah, man. What's the
Oh
deal?
my gosh, dude. You know what? I'm actually really glad that you asked. I recently had talked to the contact over there at 6 Days in Fallujah, and I had
Mm.
forwarded a bunch of questions to him about, like from the listeners about some stuff. The question was, are Navy corpsmen going to be a part of? You know about the relationship between Navy corpsmen and Marines, right, Chris?
Yeah, a little bit. Not super familiar on it, but I know that it's a pretty close thing. I feel like Marines and Navy in general are pretty kind of close work together. It's kind of like one of the other branches that really kind of do that. I don't feel like really any other branch should really do that.
Are Navy corpsmen going to be a part of this game? So
Let's do it.
the answer is yes. All right. So the short answer is yes. We do plan for Navy corpsmen to be in the game, although we're still working out details about how players will interact with them. The 6 Days project was conceived by a Marine who was medevaced out of Fallujah and credits Navy corpsmen for saving his life and many others. They must have ice in their veins, he was quoted as saying, to stay so focused under pressure. We've heard the same story from many others, and we also interviewed a corpsman for the project back in 2005. Somebody that they interviewed for this game, if a person was born that year, they could join the Army or the Marine Corps today. That's insane to think about.
Yeah.
If they were 17, got their parents' permission. And then it says, the other question was, so if there's corpsmen in the game, can the corpsmen like revive you? Is there going to be like a revive thing like in a lot of other games? So the answer to that is, as for a revive system, yes, it will be possible to revive incapacitated teammates, but they won't return to full health or have their full capabilities. We'll talk about our health system in more detail later.
That's interesting. I think it'd be kind of cool just to have the interaction like it is in real life with the Marines and the Navy and stuff like that with the corpsmen and stuff, rather than just like how most games are, like with Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever, where it's just some random dude that's part of your squad kind of a thing. I think if they are able to actually show that, hey, this person's in the Navy and this person's in the Marines, I think that's kind of cool to kind of show the real world thing. Because I just always assumed it was like the Army, right? The Army just has their own medics. I thought maybe the Marines have their own medics, Navy has their own medics, Air Force has their own medics, and they just roll with it in that way.
Yes. So it is interesting because you probably have heard this, but Marine Corps is Department of the Navy, and the Marines always think that they're smart, so they say, yeah, the men's department, and we all have a good chuckle at that. But yeah, that's where a lot of the crossover occurs in the hospital corpsman rating, because they embed directly with Marines. I would love to tell you this other question, speaking of that, because you said there's like crossover to see how people work together. Actually, that was one of the questions. So the question was, will there be interaction with other branches and agencies like OGAs, right? Do you have any experience with that when you were downrange?
I don't. Maybe I'm not familiar with the acronym.
So other government agencies like FBI, CIA, Iraqi Army, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, I worked with like Iraqi Army guys and stuff like that, and Iraqi police and stuff like that, but not no CIA or FBI or anything high speed like that.
Yeah, so I said here, and like I wrote every question. I wrote like a little sub question. So I said, this one is just for me. That this is my question, but I'm curious. Will you be providing ISR like drone intel? Injects like, hey, we've got a guy on the roof over here. Maybe human sources giving you human stuff like that. And he said, yes. There will be interactions with other types of units operating in the city, but consider us secret squirrels about this subject right now. So that is pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, that'd be good, because I definitely could see them incorporating, close air support, things like that to get some of that into it, because that'd be realistic to it. But yeah, I mean, even drone stuff would be good too, because that'd be a little bit of, I don't know, like Army, we have our own drone people. Mm-hmm. So we have like an actual MLS. I don't know if Marines just outsource that through the Air Force or if they have their own, or how that kind of works, but I can definitely see that working into the game pretty well.
So, okay, I got a good one here. A couple people were wondering, like, you roll in, you're giving your fire team orders. Do you get to play as only your character or as a whole squad? For example, if you're wounded or killed, do you restart the level or do you switch POV to another squad member to try to finish the mission? The answer here is, in the single player campaign, you will play each mission as a fire team leader and will not switch into a different role. In the multiplayer co-op version, you can play any of the 4 roles. So you'll have probably breacher, fire team leader. I'm not sure how that's going to work. You didn't go into it. But yeah, you're going to be able to do a multiplayer co-op where you play with different specialties, probably different loadouts.
Yeah, a co-op mode would be fun to be able to play with some friends and stuff like that. I think every game now has to have some kind of like multiplayer aspect to it. Personally prefer the single player one because I don't know, I don't like to interact with the others sometimes, unless it's my friends, I guess, kind of a thing. I'm just not as adventurous, I guess, in that way of playing games and stuff. I'm always afraid that I'm going to hold them back or something like that because I don't play, all that super often. So I'm like, oh man, I don't want to play with other people because I'm going to be the guy that sucks and they're going to be all pissed that I'm on their team and stuff. So I'd rather just like play with friends and stuff like that if I'm going to do that. But yeah, I feel like every game nowadays has to have some kind of co-op or multiplayer kind of aspect to it. So it'll be good to have that, I think, involved with it.
I agree. So talking about that and kind of like the different roles that you can have, the question was, somebody asked, will you be able to pick up weapons from insurgents or that are discovered in the game? And the answer here is, although we haven't resolved a final decision about this, we will probably not allow players to pick up insurgent weapons. Although we have heard a couple stories about Marines using insurgent RPGs. The only stories we've heard about Marines picking up other weapons were just for fun, because, weapons are fun, and not for combat. And in one of these cases, Marines firing these AK-47s from a rooftop just for fun were mistakenly identified as insurgents by a nearby friendly unit, which then ordered a fire mission against the building. That's a disaster. From what we understand, it would be extraordinarily unusual for Marines or soldiers to use insurgent weapons during combat. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say that people ask me that all the time. They're like, if I'm in a battle and I kill somebody and they got a sweet AK-47, can I take it and just start using that? And it's like, technically, sure, but I don't understand why. I feel like the M4 is way better than the AK-47 is. But yeah, it's not a realistic thing. Nobody ever does anything like that. You might confiscate the weapons, so that way it doesn't fall into the hands of somebody else to be able to reuse those weapons, kind of a thing. But me personally, I feel like the military equipment, that we have, the M4s and everything, are better than usually what they're using. So it's like a downgrade if you do it. And maybe in a scenario where it was like a horrible situation where you're just like short on ammo, your weapon got busted somehow or something like that, then maybe you got to do it. But for the most part, the majority of the time, nobody's ever going to do that. So I don't feel like it'd be realistic. I mean, even though people do it all the time in games, like multiplayer games, kill somebody, take their weapon, and switch to that. But realistically, which is I think what they're trying to keep with that game, that's not something that happens. So it wouldn't be very realistic to have that as an option to be able to do.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Now, AK-47s are awesome. I mean, you could pick one up and you don't need to know anything about it to use it. It's pretty simple. One thing I love about the AK-47 is when you select it off safe, the first setting is fully automatic, which I think really speaks to the intent of that weapon, how people tend to use AK-47s to just spray and pray. But yeah, if you're walking through and you see a gun on the ground, well, I don't know why you would switch from your primary weapon to some other weapon unless yours had been shot or damaged beyond repair, and the only thing you're cornered, pinned down, and the only thing around is an insurgent AK-47, which is not a likely scenario. And additionally, too, I've been in a handful of ticks in my career, and the most I've ever shot was 3 magazines, and I would normally carry 6. And I've never heard of anybody. Not true, but in my personal experiences, never heard of anybody shooting through their ammo and even needing to worry about going black on ammo or Winchester.
Yeah, those are usually crazy stories that result in someone like earning a Medal of Honor or something like that because they, ran through all their ammo and had to fight off the enemy to keep everybody else alive, and then that kind of a thing. It's not like a common thing, but
yeah.
And I think I was going to go back to with the picking up the other weapon. I mean, your M4 is going to be the one that's zeroed. You've already got everything dialed in. Why in the hell are you going to pick up some random ass weapon and probably not even have it zeroed?
Yep.
So that's going to be a flaw. But the one advantage I do think of the AK-47 I just noticed is that that thing can be dirty as hell and it still is pretty good. You don't have to worry about jamming up. Where M4, you got to keep it somewhat clean.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to end up with some jams. So
yeah.
That is probably the advantage I think the AK-47 might have. But other than that, I think the M4 is much better.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. So I think that they're right about that. Let's see. On that note, there was a question about loadout customization. Like, will you be able to pick what weapons you carry onto the battlefield? And there are apparently multiple game modes. So Marine Fire Team mode is one example. Players will be given a loadout that is specific to the role. In some of the other modes, which have not been announced yet, so they have been keeping some stuff secret, players will have more flexibility in their loadouts. So that's interesting. Did you have any, like, when you were getting ready to deploy, did you have any say in what sort of sight you got or what sort of NVGs you got or what sort of attachments you got or anything like that?
Not too much. Like the sights were always like for let's say like my Well, actually, both by deployments. It was basically, the NCOs, the non-commissioned officers, got like the better sites, and then everybody under the non-commissioned officers got like, what we got laying around. We got usually, like, especially, I can't remember what it was like on my first deployment for weapon wise, but I remember on my second deployment, all the NCOs had ACOGs, so we all had ACOGs, and then all the lower enlisted had M68s or just iron sights. Most had the M68s though, and then the attachments, I think like I had the bipod mainly for the handle on the front because I like the handle on the front. And it was free. They gave a bunch of them out, and it's like, hey, if you want to put it on your M4, cool. And so I threw it on there for the handle and stuff like that. I didn't really use the actual because there's a little button to kick out the legs, and you could use it that way, but I never used that way. But and then a bunch of the NCOs got Surefire lights attached to them, and so we got a bunch of those, and those weren't signed for, so technically I got to keep mine. So it was pretty glad I still have mine.
Nice.
It sucks batteries like crazy though, so it's not very useful really. But it was cool at the time, and it had even the little trigger button that was like by the buttstock or by the bipod handle, so that way you turn the flashlight on and stuff like that. But then for the most part, yeah, I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of cool, crazy attachments. You had a specific person that got like the 203 attachment to it, but they were usually like gunners inside of vehicles. That way they could use the rubber rounds to be able to do warning shots with them and stuff. And then outside of that, you just had really just the sights, and there wasn't any other kind of cool optics. We didn't have any like the with the PEC 13s or anything like that. I don't think we had any of those in my platoon. And then MVGs, we all had the same. I had I had the what is it, the PVS 7s? It would be, I think it was called.
Was that the binos or the monos?
Yeah, the two with the double eye ones.
The NVGs.
Yeah, so most of us had those. The only people that had the single eye ones were, I think, the platoon sergeant, the platoon leader had like those ones. But now I think I've seen that soldiers pretty much are pretty commonly don't even use the PVS 7s, the double-eyed ones. There's just the single-eye ones for the most part now. Everybody has those ones.
So another question here, only a couple more in case anybody's wondering. One of the questions was, is there a planned rating for the game? And they have said the game will likely carry a mature rating. So the game will be, adult themed with violence and probably language. So you can expect to see a mature theme. And I don't know, I wouldn't expect anything else, right?
Yeah, you feel like you have to be. I mean, you're doing stuff, especially with it being like based on real events in a war scenario kind of a thing. You have to. I mean, if it did come out with anything less than a mature rating thing, I'd be a little skeptical about the game. I'd be like, what the hell is this? Yeah. I mean, this can't be very realistic then to the game, to the real world kind of events if it's less than a mature rating. I mean, it's going to be some pretty mature stuff that's going to happen in this game, with that all those events that were going on. So yeah, I would expect that to be a rating for it.
Yeah, I don't know if this will resonate with everyone listening, but if I see a horror movie come out rated PG-13, I'm like, no go. That is just not going to be good. I'm not going to be interested. It's just I already know it's not going to be good. So
if it's a horror, especially a horror one. I mean, other movies can get away with that, for certain genres, but horror. Yeah, no, it's got to be an R-rated movie.
Yeah, represent, and in this case, not to compare Iraq to a horror movie, although you sure could. It's not going to have the same impact that I think that they're going for if they don't show some of the brutality of it,
Yep. Yeah, no, and just even like, I mean, just the gun violence in general. I mean, even if it doesn't show any blood or people being blown up, I mean, I feel like that's going to give it a mature rating anyways. I mean, what is Fortnite? I mean, isn't Fortnite probably rated mature? I mean, that's pretty cartoony kind of fighting thing like that. And I think that's still rated mature, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. Cartoon violence. I think that's actually a thing on ESRB.
Yeah.
But I'm not an expert to talk too much about that. Probably I don't want to give out any black pearls here. The last question here, and this is one that I thought was really great, a really great question. Is there a game mode where a player can just walk around Fallujah? Like, this came from one of the listeners, Mudrock, and said, "Hey, can I just walk around and like show people like where I slept and where like can I maybe use it as a reenactment for some stuff that I actually went through when I was in Fallujah?" And here's the answer. This is a really great question. We've also had a number of Fallujah veterans ask us about this directly as well. We haven't resolved this entirely, but there are a few things to keep in mind. One, the game's specialty is very intimate, close quarters combat, which actually that's kind of a big statement right there, letting you know that like you can expect to be doing a lot of close quarters combat in this game. Therefore, we have to focus on very specific, smaller neighborhoods within Fallujah, rather than offering an open world game that covers the whole city. So even if we have a no combat mode, we wouldn't be able to include all the buildings. So maybe bad news for some. The game includes a mixture of procedurally generated buildings and recreated signature buildings. So somebody had said, is this going to recreate like Hell House? And I think I interpret this as maybe, but they didn't say. Okay. Since the procedurally generated buildings change shape, it's probably the signature buildings that people who are in Fallujah would be most interested in returning to. If we were to offer a no combat mode, it would probably be for these specific signature buildings, and this is something we will definitely discuss internally. So don't give up hope about being able to go walk through some stuff, but the idea of this being Grand Theft Auto style, they're saying basically don't expect that.
Yeah, that'd be a little tough. I feel like you deviate from the mission very easily, and then it'd be hard to keep track of it. And then you still have some people that maybe get lost. You're like, oh crap, am I supposed to go left or right? And then they go right, and then they end up like way off track. And then they're like, well, now we got to figure out a way to be able to get them back on track, kind of a thing into the game. So yeah, I would definitely see it being like a thing where it's like on tracks in a way, to where it's a certain direction you still got to go. You can maybe deviate a little bit, but it probably doesn't result in a dead end kind of a thing. But yeah. You can, and then it'd be super hard to try to get it to where it's all the exact locations of everything in real world type of thing. But yeah, like the key buildings, I can understand. But even with that whole thing, the internals aren't going to be probably the exact thing, because they even said that with the procedurally generated internals, that way it's different each time you enter the building, kind of a thing. So it's not like you're probably going to go in, even in a key building, go inside of that key main building that they have built into it. And you go inside of it, it's probably not going to be the same room that it was there in the real world, and the door to the right's not going to be the same door that's there in the real world, kind of a thing. And then, especially if it's regenerating the next time you go to play it. So
yeah,
the exterior probably easily to do, but the interior would be tough unless the game developers went to all these locations and mapped out the inside of the buildings too.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. So overall, I feel pretty happy to have those questions answered. Do you think that makes you feel? How does that make you feel about this game being an upcoming release for later this year?
I think it just kind of keeps the theme to ensure that hey, it's gonna be realistic, right? It's not Fortnite. It's not something ridiculous, and out there. So I think that if anything, it sounds like they're sticking true to making it realistic. It's not your average shooter game, kind of a thing like Call of Duty would be or whatever, where it's just a story. It's real world, and we're keeping it realistic. We're not adding in all the extra stuff. As cool as it might be, we're keeping it the way it would be in the real world, kind of a thing, and how it happened in the real life.
Yeah,
so I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching that clip from our live show. We're live right here on YouTube, Sunday through Thursday, 1800 Pacific Standard Time. If you want, come on by, join the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you like that video and you want to see more, consider checking out this video right here or subscribing to the channel with this button right here. I look forward to talking to you really soon. I'm out for now.